not
literally
working so
24
well.
hours.
So that's why I put no.
No, she's good now.
I was
What was that? Go on. You screamed, you're on. Oh.
All right, welcome everybody to the first meeting of the new year for the Human Relations Commission. Let's get 2017 off to a better start than 2016. I think we'll do that right now. So, Mary, can you do roll call, please?
Commissioner Alasani,
here.
Commissioner Chen, here. Commissioner Gordon Gray,
Here.
Commissioner Onan,
Here.
Commissioner Savage,
Here.
Vice Chair Stinger,
Here.
Chair Stone,
Here.
Councilmember Koo,
Here.
All right, thank you, Mary. Do we have any agenda changes, requests, or deletions?
No, Chair.
Great. All right, we're going to move into oral communications from our great audience. We'll start with David Carnahan.
Thank you, Chair Stone and Commissioners. I'm here actually tonight for two purposes. The first of which, I'm sure you can guess, is board and commission recruitment. It's the only time you ever see me on the wee hours of the evening unless it's Monday. The city is currently looking to fill roles on the Historic Resources Board, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and the Planning and Transportation Commission. And the City Clerk's Office always wants to come to boards and commissions because not only are you great resources for reaching out to community members, but our very engaged community members both come to meetings and watch from home. So we're hoping you will help spread the word, talk to at least 2 people for 2 of the commissions, try and encourage them to apply. The deadline is January 27th at 4:30 p.m. So again, it's Historic Resources Board, Parks and Recreation Commission, and the Planning and Transportation Commission. And I'll hand out a flyer for each of you 2 in a moment. The second reason is to express the City Council's appreciation for your service last year. Now, 4 of you were able to make it to the Board and Commission recognition event. The 3 of you that weren't able to make it, we have your proclamations, which I promise I will not read right now, and your appreciation gifts. So let me hand those out, and I hope you have a fantastic meeting.
Thank you. And I'm gonna say, former Chair Onan, I think you did a better job at rallying the troops at the boards and recognition. We used to have the entire commission at those, and this year we only had 4 members. So hopefully next year. Yeah, but the rain doesn't stop the HRC.
No.
We're tough. Exactly. All right, next speaker is Lynn Krug. Did I say that right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, let me introduce myself just quickly. I'm Lynn Krug, and I'm chapter chair for the City of Palo Alto SEIU chapter of some 550 employees of the City of Palo Alto. And I'm also in place of my colleague, Bunny Bornstein, who represents 146 more of the part-time hourlies. I'd like to thank you for the privilege to speak to you tonight, to all the Human Relations Commission members, and good luck on your mission. I very much appreciate your attitudes and your forward thinking. I'd like to thank the City Council members who participated in the colleagues memo and the encouragement of how we should treat one another, and for the inclusion of workers. The City of Palo Alto workers are an essential part of the community. For many years in Palo Alto, due in great part to media hostility, employees have been considered the other. We need to be looked at and honored for our participation and our love of this community. Many of us commute long distances, but we still participate with full dedication every workday. The reason I'd like to speak to you tonight are about things that we can change, and there are 3 basic items: top-down management, discrimination, and media bias. The City of Palo Alto would like to perceive itself as healthy, innovative, and good business practice. Without full circle communication, top-down management doesn't provide for good project management, good business practice, where all parties are accountable, and the union employees are like a canary in the coal mine. it should be full circle so all parties are accountable for the well-being of our community and the good function of our organization. Let's replace top-down management with team building and a healthy work environment. Years ago, we had in-house management classes. Those were removed. This type of activity helps interaction, it helps education, and it helps move an organization forward to build together. Top-down management can also spur on cronyism and hiring people's family members, which is not good business practice. The good old boy network is a detriment to the work environment. We need to be a workplace that hires for professionalism and expertise. That means, unfortunately, we really need to consider paying people fairly to get the expertise at that upper and middle management level that we need to guide all. That means not being the worst city to work for in the Bay Area by having grievances and arbitrations that exceed the rate of any other area. We need to be able to speak to one another and resolve issues on lower levels. We need to be a forward-thinking city that works together. This costs us money. This costs us a lot of money. And I'm going to bring those numbers to the City Council coming up in the near future, probably by the end of the month. Now, top-down management is not about accountability. And what often happens in top-down management is also something that I know you guys have talked about for mental health issues, about discrimination and bullying. When you have full circle accountability, you have a more cooperative, generating goodwill environment. And that's what we want to see as a union, and we want to see that for our community, and we want to see that happen here so we can be a better and growing forward organization. I appreciate you considering these issues, and once again, what we'd like to see happen is that we reconsider top-down management, we eliminate discrimination, and just like in December, and I'll make this short, you saw it, and I know you did in the Post, how they said that in 17 months we received 3 raises. That's not true. What actually happened, it's a 3-year contract. We postponed raises within SEIU for 4 months, and then our actual raises to bring us to 3% below median occurred over a 17-month period so that the city could adjust to that. We're still well under median. So we do our part. We work for less than other cities on average. And I want to be the person that helps persuade you that we need to be honored as part of the community and something that's great for all of us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to our first item of business, the Mental Health Learning Series. Minka, can you introduce our speaker?
Sure. Dr. Sauter, will you come forward? And we turned your microphone on right next to you. So I'm really pleased to have Dr. Tasha Sauter, who is the Medical Director of Trauma and Recovery Services at the Veterans Administration. Last spring, I went to a wonderful conference on mental health issues at the VA. It was a whole-day conference, and I definitely learned a lot, and I was very impressed with the array of services that they offer to the veterans in our community. So when I think it was Commissioner Alasani who suggested we get someone from the VA to participate in a mental health learning series, I was very pleased that Dr. Sauter said she could come. So welcome, and she has a PowerPoint. You could see it on both locations, and thank you for being here.
Great, thank you so much for inviting me. So I was asked today to speak about the VA Palo Alto and mental health services that are available there, as well as to talk a bit about some veteran-specific mental health issues, and in particular, my area of expertise is substance use disorders and post-traumatic stress disorder. So I'll be touching on those issues. So starting off, you may be familiar with the mission of the VA, which is to fulfill President Lincoln's promise to care for him who shall have borne the battle and for his widow and his orphan by serving and honoring the men and women who are Americans veterans. The Department of Veterans Affairs is made up of 3 different branches. The Palo Alto VA is part of the Veterans Health Administration. The VHA is divided into 22 Veterans Integrated Service Networks across the United States and associated territories. We are in VISN 21, which, as you can see, has a very large catchment area, including half of California, almost the entirety of Nevada, Hawaii, the Philippines, Guam, and America Samoa. So there are 10 facilities within VISN 21, and of course Palo Alto is one of those. Some of these facilities are larger, such as Palo Alto, and some of them are quite a bit smaller, and we work to share resources to be able to move veterans between these facilities in order to provide them with the best match for specialty treatment services. For the VA Palo Alto in particular, the local catchment encompasses this broad area that starts from far below Monterey and goes all the way out past Stockton and Sonora. So just for this facility alone, it's a large area that incorporates some urban areas as well as some very rural areas where veterans can be located. We have 3 main divisions where our inpatient facilities are, and that's located at Palo Alto, Livermore, and Menlo Park. And we have 7 community-based outpatient clinics across that region. Our focus is veteran-centric care, providing evidence-based treatments, focusing on psychosocial rehabilitation and recovery. We do a lot of education and clinical research to inform not only VA clinical practice, but also national practice. And we are motivated by collaborative and integrated care both within the VA and with the broader community. The mental health care structure for the VA Palo Alto includes a large research and education component, as well as outpatient, inpatient, addiction treatment services, residential treatment services, for specialty care, including substance use disorders and post-traumatic stress disorder, homelessness. And then we also have our domiciliary, which provides outreach homeless services. So this is a long list of specialty care services available through the outpatient clinics. Again, there's services for PTSD, substance use disorders, general mental health treatment. The Veterans Recovery Center is a severe mental illness treatment program. We have mental health intensive case management, compensated work therapy, a women's counseling center. We provide family services and family therapy for veterans and their partners and children. We have suicide prevention coordinators that we'll talk a little bit more about later on, and integrated primary care and mental health teams. Our inpatient mental health services include 3 20-bed locked units, and there are specialty tracks within some of those units, ranging from geriatrics to more specialty-focused treatment for PTSD, substance use disorder, and serious mental illness. We also have a mental health evaluation clinic that coordinates care for crisis management, both by telephone and through the emergency departments. We have 150 residential rehabilitation treatment beds where patients can come for intensive treatment services. We have a 21 men's PTSD treatment program and a 10 female-only veterans treatment program, which is relatively unique for the country. We have a 28-day, 19-bed substance use treatment program, as well as a longer 90-day treatment program that has 30 beds. And then we have the Homeless Veterans Rehabilitation Program, which is a 180-day, 70-bed treatment program to help veterans who have chronic homelessness issues integrate into the community, build resources, get treatment, both medical care and mental health treatment. I think they were recently featured in the local newspaper as well. So in addition, Our domiciliary and homeless veteran services provides justice outreach services into local prisons and jails and courts. We do homeless outreach. We have grant per diem housing where we contract with shelters to provide housing for veterans. We also do HUD-VASH and homeless medical care for veterans.
What is that?
It's a VA-supported housing, so it's a voucher system where they can get supported housing. It's, as I'm sure you're aware, quite expensive to live in this area, and so it helps provide some resources. So homelessness at the Palo Alto VA is under the umbrella of mental health services, and one of the reasons for that is that, as this study shows, we're well aware that many chronically homeless veterans have comorbid medical and psychiatric conditions. So you can see 33% of veterans who've been homeless for 2 years or more in this study had mental health issues, substance use disorder, as well as serious physical illnesses. The top 5 most common disorders, mental health diagnoses among chronically homeless veterans, are depression, alcohol dependence, alcohol abuse, drug use disorders, and anxiety disorders, which would include PTSD. Typically, about a third of all patients that are seen through the VA Palo Alto for any reason carry a formal mental health diagnosis, and 30% of all of our patients have received mental health services during their contacts with the VA. And you can see I put some numbers for the amount of unique veterans that we're serving in a year, and the numbers are quite high, which represents that extensive catchment area. Great. So turning a little bit more to the specific disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder has been, symptoms related to the impact of war have been described going back to Greek and Roman history, but it was first officially categorized as a mental health diagnosis in 1980, which was in the aftermath of the Vietnam War. It's the second most prevalent anxiety disorder in the United States, and it has a lifetime prevalence of 6.8%. Women are twice as likely to have a lifetime diagnosis of PTSD than men are, and that's typically thought to be due to the nature of traumas that women experience. There's higher rates of developing PTSD from interpersonal traumas like rape or molestation than there are from physical assaults, things like that. PTSD is associated with high rates of comorbidity, social and occupational impairment, and high healthcare costs. I always like to remind folks that PTSD is frequently attached to the veteran population, but trauma itself is very common in our population at large, and PTSD is present throughout general population and mental health population samples. You can see that men and women both have approximately 26% of, in the general population, have experienced at least one traumatic event in their lifetime, and some many more than one. This shows some numbers based on some of the experiences that people can have that can lead to a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder and their prevalence in the general population. And then, of course, there are some specific traumas that are more related to veterans, and we do provide treatment for PTSD regardless of what the traumatic event is. So if it's childhood trauma, motor vehicle accidents, natural disasters, we provide treatment for that. Combat and military sexual trauma is an area of particular expertise and focus for the VA. Just some information around those. The annual incidence of experiencing sexual assault is 3% among active duty women and 1% among active duty men. Folks are sometimes surprised that men in the military experience sexual assault as well.
Do you have numbers on what that is in outside of the military, just within society itself, to have a comparison?
Sexual assault?
Yeah.
So this is for the general population. So this is a lifetime prevalence. The rape and molestation are categorized separately. And this is an annual incidence, so for each year of being in the military. And then PTSD from combat differs based on the conflict. So in Vietnam, 31% of men developed post-traumatic stress disorder and 27% of women in that conflict developed PTSD. Gulf War veterans, the numbers were somewhat lower at 12%. And OIF, that's Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom, which is Afghanistan, the rates range from 13 to 33%. This was a population that was at times required to do multiple tours, which is different from the earlier conflicts. And so we know that multiple tours raise the risk of developing post-traumatic stress disorder, the number of traumas that a unit experiences, the type of job that they were there to do, those sorts of things, and whether or not there were physical injuries associated with the traumatic event also lead to higher rates. So PTSD is defined by the witnessing or experiencing of the traumatic event combined with persistent and disabling symptoms in these four categories: intrusion, avoidance, negative alterations in cognitions and mood, and alterations in arousal and reactivity. And this is where I have the video.
You love ever been in a tornado or car accident? Experienced sexual or physical abuse? Served in a war zone? Most people have been through some kind of life-threatening or traumatic event, and it's common to have stress-related reactions after a trauma. But when symptoms last more than 3 months and they're not getting better, it's time to get help. Meet Sam. He recently returned from serving in Iraq. For many people, being in a crowded place like a baseball stadium or busy grocery store feels comfortable, but not for Sam. What should be a nice night out, taking his wife Tara to a restaurant, isn't fun for him anymore. He can only handle it if he sits with his back to the wall where he has a good view of the exits, and even then, he's too on edge to really enjoy it. At home, things aren't the way they used to be either. His sleep is restless at best, and some nights Tara isn't sure if Sam comes to bed at all. Sam seems to have a short fuse these days, and sometimes he snaps at Tara over tiny misunderstandings. What he and Tara never talk about is the trauma he experienced when he was deployed. He's never mentioned the guilt, the weight he carries around, wishing he could have done more to prevent what happened. Instead, he's turned inward, pulling away from family and friends. Tara tried to give him some space, but after months passing without change, she really started to worry. She was the one to finally say what they were both thinking: it's time to get help. That's when Sam finally decided to take action. He reached out to a doctor who told him about PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. Sam's symptoms were getting in the way of enjoying his life. Re-experiencing, hyperarousal, feeling worse about yourself or the world, and avoidance are the 4 types of symptoms people with PTSD have. Sam's doctor explained each. The first is reliving the event, or re-experiencing. This is often an unwanted memory or even a flashback where you feel like you're right back in the situation again. Seeing, hearing, or even smelling something that reminds you of the trauma can trigger these. Nightmares where you relive parts of the event in your sleep are common too. The second is avoidance, staying away from situations that remind you of the trauma. That's why Sam tries to avoid thinking about painful memories altogether. He pours himself into his work or uses alcohol to keep his mind from going back to the trauma. The third is feeling worse about yourself or the world since the trauma. You might feel overwhelming guilt, like Sam, or not trust anyone. You just might not be able to feel happy, even when you are around people you love. The fourth type of symptom is sudden rushes of anger, irritability, feeling jittery, always on alert, always on the lookout for danger. This is called hyperarousal, and loud noises or a driver cutting in front of you can be all it takes to set you off. If you recognize any of these symptoms of PTSD in yourself or someone you love, don't wait. See your doctor to find out if it could be PTSD. Just like Sam and Tara found, there is hope. You don't have to live with the symptoms of PTSD forever. Effective treatments are available. To learn more about PTSD or how to get help, visit the National Center for PTSD website at www.ptsd.va.gov.
I think so. There we go. Thank you. Okay. So in addition to those core symptoms, we are also looking at these associated features, and they can include things related to interpersonal relationships that people have with loved ones, and it can include somatic complaints, personality changes, dissociative symptoms, changes in worldview or belief systems. So people who were raised to believe that bad things happen to bad people and good things happen to good people, who find themselves in terrible situations, may begin to question why them and question their world belief. And so we work with them around that. Social withdrawal and isolation are major symptoms. Keeps them withdrawing from relationships, from social situations, may keep them isolated from coming into treatment. So getting these people into treatment is very important to getting them help. It's also important to know that when we're treating PTSD, we're also treating many other issues as well. 80% of those with PTSD have at least one other psychiatric diagnosis. And we know that PTSD, likely mediated through chronic stress, causes higher rates of medical disorders. The rates of diabetes are 4 times as high in people with PTSD than those without. Heart disease, liver disease, chronic pain. Our veterans are at high risk of being prescribed opiate pain medications, which then can lead to other problems. We monitor very closely for substance use disorder in this patient population. 60% of patients with PTSD have a co-occurring substance use disorder. Just like the rest of the country, we're looking at trends, and you can see that some of these numbers are going up over the more recent years. And then I can't talk about mental health in veterans without touching on suicide prevention. Some numbers that you may have heard. I think I saw them talked about in the campaign even. In 2014, 20 veterans died each day from suicide. The piece that you may not have heard is that 6 out of the 20 were users of VA services. So we know that getting connected with the VA, getting treatment through the VA is protective for veterans. Veterans accounted for 18% of all deaths by suicide that year, and 66% of them were the result of firearms. Our veterans are very comfortable around firearms, and that's a particularly lethal way of having a suicide attempt. So we encourage and educate around firearm, keeping them safe. We give out gun locks to try to protect them. We encourage them to give them to family members if they need to keep them safe. And then hopefully everyone has heard about our Veterans Crisis Line, which is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week telephone, web, and chat and text connection. And through May 2016, they've answered 2.3 million calls, 289,000 chat connections, and 55 texts. So they are definitely being utilized, and we want to make sure that the word gets out. Some other things that we're doing to promote veteran suicide prevention. We've developed a SAVE protocol, which is a veteran-specific gatekeeper training, similar to some of the trainings that are going on in schools and colleges around the country. We do comprehensive screening and assessment. We identify high-risk veterans who are followed by our suicide prevention coordinators. They are in mental health positions with the single goal of tracking these folks that are high risk, getting them into treatment, developing relationships with them, calling them, talking to them. And one of the nice things about being a national healthcare system is that if I have a veteran that I have flagged as being high risk in California and they move to New York, our suicide prevention coordinator gives a warm handoff, and the suicide prevention coordinator in New York picks them up and gets them into treatment. There's also a website that connects families for telephone coaching, where they can coach families about how to get their loved ones who are veterans into treatment, engaged in treatment, interested in treatment, and motivated for treatment. And then we have a variety of community partnerships. So this is a picture of a Ride to Recovery biking trip that our veterans do every year from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and they ride together and provide support to each other. So it's not just about mental health treatment, it's about reintegration and building community supports. So our goal is to care for and empower veterans to reclaim meaningful roles in their community and utilize skills that foster resilience and sustain wellness. I brought some information, some pamphlets about what is PTSD, some pamphlets focusing on military sexual trauma and firearms safety that we provide to veterans. These are bracelets with this veteran crisis line information. On the outside it says support our veterans, and on the inside it has the crisis line number, so those are pretty popular. And some information about opiate overdose prevention and naloxone distribution, which is a focus of our mental health treatment as well.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Any commissioners have any questions?
Yes, I do.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for being here today. This is a subject I've been very interested in. My question is, I've talked to a number of homeless vets in our community who are very anti-VA. They feel like they've had bad experiences there, that they didn't get the care that they needed, and now they're, living kind of what they call off the grid, and just very almost hostile, I would say, toward the VA. And is there, I get the feeling that there's, maybe some mental health issues, and they may be interpreting things sometimes in an exaggerated or paranoid way, and yet at the same time I'm hearing that some of their concerns are valid, and they have not always been treated appropriately or respectfully. So what is the VA doing to kind of bridge that gap?
Well, I can speak to what our facility does to try to work on that. And I think one of the places to start is by making sure that if you're having interactions with those veterans, that you know that there are services available to them, and to help encourage them to make connections with those services, but also to know that there are parallel services available through veterans centers. So they don't necessarily have to go to the VA, they can go to vet centers and get care there. And so that's an alternative way that the VHA is providing services to those folks. And then through the outreach programs that I talked about, we try to bring those services to the veterans. And so if there are veterans that you're aware of that aren't willing to come into the VA, sometimes that can be related to post-traumatic stress disorder, or sometimes it can be related to, like you said, paranoia, or even bad experiences with command, or military experiences in general. And so our goal is to have the resources to bring those services to them where they are, so that they don't have to come to the VA to get those. So we have the mobile healthcare services, and we have the mental health outreach services that can help provide some services to them. And the goal is to build the relationship and let them know that maybe the VA that they were connecting to in the 1970s is not the VA of today.
So are you partnering with places like Life Moves or the Y, or places where homeless vets might tend to congregate?
We do. So those outreach services go to places like that. I don't have the specifics of which locations they go to, but that's exactly what their role is to go to places like that where they congregate, to go to encampments, to go to shelters, anywhere that we're aware that there are veterans. And there are also ways that I can give you some information. If we become aware of a veteran that is homeless and is not receiving services, that we can connect with them and go directly to them. So if it's someplace that we're not visiting, we want to reach out to those folks and get connected.
Well, you know, there was a controversy over the past few years about people living in cars, and some number of them were veterans who were, as I said, living off the grid, living in vehicles, very, very suspicious of all government, very suspicious of the VA. And some of them I knew from the Y because they were members there and they were using the Y to exercise and shower. They're essentially like living in a van or a station wagon and, you know, not receiving any care or outreach services that I could see, although they were getting some support at the Y, but the Y isn't open 24 hours a day. So it was kind of a difficult situation, but this was a hard population to build a trustful relationship with because there was such a high level of suspicion.
Yeah, yeah. It's a tough problem, and I know it's one that, yeah, we try to build relationships, and not just, as I've been saying, trying to build the relationships with veterans, but also with like law enforcement and through the courts. And so if they're entering into some sort of supervised setting or a supportive setting where they're getting resources in some other way, trying to access them at those points of entry as well.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have a quick one. How long does it take PTSD to present once the traumatic event occurs?
That's a great question. So there are immediate reactions that people can have acute stress reactions, and that can happen from the moment of the traumatic event moving forward. There are also delayed responses. So in particular, we do see that with folks with a lot of training. So veterans, police officers, people who are trained to respond in the moment and then may develop symptoms down the road. But to actually reach the point of a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, the symptoms need to be present for 3 months or longer. So the body and the mind is an amazing thing, and it has a way of processing and healing through experiences. And so when that doesn't occur on its own over 3 months, that's the point at which the diagnosis can be made and interventions should begin.
Question is with the VA effort, there's a lot of effort in there. What is the success rate, and how do you assess the success rate?
That's a great question too. So we have a lot of local outcomes monitoring as well as national monitoring. And I'm a clinician, so I provide the care, and we do monitoring within the programs that I work in. And so there are measures that we use that are very focused on PTSD symptoms as well as addiction-related monitors. So we track their symptoms from the time that they enter treatment to the end, and we show dramatic decreases in those symptoms in the areas of PTSD, anxiety in general, depression, and substance use. But we're also wanting to, and we are tracking things like quality of life indexes. So it's not just about symptom reduction, but it's about how is your relationship with your partner, and how much are you enjoying the activities that you participate in. And so much more of a recovery-based model rather than just a focused symptom model. And it's also about preventing adverse events too, or outcomes that we're trying to reduce acute hospitalizations, keep people out of our locked units, and reducing suicide and reducing violent behaviors or incarceration. So all of those things are being tracked as well.
Thank you. I had 2 questions also. First question was about the shelter that you provide. Is there a wait list for the shelter?
For the homeless veterans
Yes.
program. So it is a rehabilitation program. It's not a shelter specifically. It provides housing with integrated treatment services. And I don't believe that there is a wait list. There's a process for getting referred to the program.
Thank you. My other question is there a characteristic of the veterans in Palo Alto that's unique or different from other parts of the state or other regions? Or is our veteran population different in any way?
Well, our veteran population, like I showed you those maps, it includes a lot of different people. I can tell you in terms of racial and ethnic backgrounds, our VA capture is more similar to the California population, so there's higher rates of Hispanic veterans than there are in some other VAs across the country. In terms of the roles that they played in the military and the mental health issues that they struggle with, those are consistent across the country.
I just want to piggyback off of what Vice Chair Stinger said because you stole my question. So I need to come up with a. It's okay. It was a great question. That's why you great minds think alike. So going off that, we know that people with different cultural backgrounds sometimes have more difficult times coming forward with admitting to mental health or seeking treatment. I mean, do you see that at similar rates within the VA as you do within greater society, and how does the VA address issues like that?
So I think that's more of a veteran cultural barrier for us. So the idea of mental illness or PTSD being a weakness and coming for treatment being a weakness. So that's, I think, where we struggle more than the cultural issues. And so there's been a lot more publicity around PTSD and a lot more discussion around it recently or over the last 10 years or so, and we support that and we think it's good. There's a lot of misinformation and concerning dialogue around PTSD, and I think the more that we can make sure that the community has the same message, that it's actually a sign of strength to get help for yourself and for your family and to come into treatment, and that treatment is difficult and it can be painful, but that there is an opportunity to get better and to have a more successful life. So just based on the military culture, that seems to be the larger issue in terms of people not coming to treatment or not engaging in services.
And have you seen within your own practice that it has been improving veterans' willingness to come forward based on what you just said, how now the community is a little more open and it's more we've discussed this issue much more over the past 10 years. I mean, has that helped in your experiences?
I think it can only help. I think that it does help, and it has helped for some. I think there are still a lot of people who need to connect with services that haven't made their way yet. Some of those folks we've had encounters with, and so I think there's much more work to be done in terms of reducing stigma around PTSD in particular, around mental health issues, and so, yeah, the more we can do that, the better off these folks will be.
I had a question. Is there an occasion where somebody has PTSD that was not in combat? Do you see that?
Absolutely.
What would be an example of that if they're not?
Well, we talked a little bit about some of those examples. So sexual assaults, childhood trauma, so neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse in childhood, natural disasters.
I'm talking about veterans.
Veterans have,
okay,
veterans are similar to the general population.
Right.
They have lifetime experiences, and in fact, there are some differences. The Vietnam War there was a draft, and so folks were pulled not across all socioeconomic groups, but from particular ones, but more randomly. This was an all-volunteer military for the most recent conflicts, and so that draws people that may have come from difficult childhood circumstances or socioeconomic circumstances or have lowered resources because of where they grew up. So those people are particularly vulnerable for pre-existing post-traumatic stress disorder, and then adding on to that any experience that they might have in combat or with military sexual trauma.
So if they weren't in combat or sexual trauma, I wonder if they would think, well, this is not related to, my experience in the Army, so I'm not going to ask for help. I just want, you know what I mean? Like, this is not relevant as a vet, or this is not because I'm a vet, so I feel like I shouldn't ask for that help, or is that?
Yeah, I can say that that's not typically what the barrier is to getting help. And at least from an evidence-based perspective, we know that the most likely indicator for developing PTSD from a particular trauma event is a prior trauma. So folks that have sequential traumas over the course of their lifespan are at higher risk of actually developing PTSD from any particular event. So we would see it as all being related, all being the veteran's life experiences, and all being part of the work that we have to do and the responsibility that we have to these folks.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much again for the presentation, and thanks for the work that you're doing. I had two questions. One in the slide that had things like opioid abuse that was trending upward, and some other things were trending upwards. Are there general theories as to why they're going up in the past few years?
So if I can quickly go back to that slide.
Yeah.
So this is tracking cocaine, opioids, cannabis, and amphetamines, and you can see that cocaine use is going down, whereas cannabis and opiate use is going up more significantly. There's a little bit of an uptick of amphetamines, and this is actually one area in which the demographics of the VA location is important, because there are different drugs present in different areas of the country. So in Northern California up through Oregon, amphetamines are much more present than they are in some East Coast areas, and so that's a little bit unique to this area. The cannabis has been going up. There's increased access through medical marijuana, and so a lot of our veterans are using that. And then the opiate use disorder is consistent with what's being seen across the country, and part of that is connected to prescribing practices that have persisted over years and have led to challenges when heroin becomes cheaper than prescribed opiates, and changing substances that are included in opiates that you can buy on the street. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. And my other question is, are there things you think, like ways that would be beneficial if we broaden the relationship between the VA and the city of Palo Alto, or things we can do to help? Is there a bigger role the city can play in its relationship with the VA?
Well, certainly hearing that you know of areas where there may be veterans that we aren't reaching, we would want to establish a relationship where we could have a dialogue around that. And so if there's an opportunity to connect around how to support people that you become aware of that are struggling in the community that could be benefiting from services but aren't. And then I think, it sounds like there were representatives at some of our informational sessions around mental health, but the more the cross-pollination and dialogue, the more shared information, the better it is in terms of reaching these veterans.
Thanks so much again.
And the other thing I would add is, I think, monitoring access to weapons and substances of abuse. I don't know how extensive the role of your committee is, but any opportunity to address those issues, I think, goes a long way, not just to help veterans, but everybody in our community.
I was wondering if I could also ask a question about a slide where you talked about the suicide rate. And yeah, that was the last bullet. So you said 65% are aged 50 or older. So what is the scenario here? Are these veterans who've been out of the military for a while and now they've become very depressed in middle age? Or are they people who were doing 20, 30 years and now they've recently been discharged and are suddenly, they can't make the transition back to civilian life? Or what is the...
Yeah, this is actually consistent with general population suicide trends, and so that bullet point informs the fact that we're not just talking about our recent returnees, that certainly they're at risk, but our older veterans are actually at the highest risk, and this is the highest risk, or one of the highest risk time periods of life, and so typically, these are older veterans that come to the point in their life where they're retiring, their roles are shifting in their families, they maybe have co-occurring substance use disorder, and so it's consistent with national trends in suicide, that's a very high-risk time of life.
So it's both
in particular for men.
So this could be someone who left the military in his 20s and now 30 years later he's...
Yes.
Or this could be someone who spent 30 years in the military and now at 50.
Yes.
Okay, he or she is not making the transition well, struggling.
Right. But this is a very high-risk time of life among veterans as it is for the general population. So again, when some of these statistics are put out by the media or in the community, there's a lot of focus on our recent returnees, and we just want to make sure that everybody remembers that we're not just talking about our recent returnees, that it's our older veterans that are at risk as well.
Well, great. Thank you so much for coming out here for the work. Oh, yes, Councilwoman.
Just a couple questions. Thank you for being here also. Just to piggyback off what Commissioner Al-Hassani asked, what Palo Alto can do for the Veterans Hospital, for the veterans, but also at the same time, because you have all the information, I was wondering, do you go, especially with your hospital being near neighborhoods in Palo Alto, do you engage with the neighborhoods to engage them and let them know what's how they can help out, etc., and what they should be knowledgeable about when with veterans within the community as well as from the hospital?
I'm trying to do that today.
Well, it's just more effective coming from you than from me when I go out and speak to them. So say, for example, if one of the neighborhoods in Palo Alto, the neighborhood associations would like to have you come and give a presentation, would you be able to do that?
I would definitely be open to the invitation. Yeah, and I think there are many providers like myself that are very committed to this issue and want to provide education as a way of destigmatizing and increasing access to care. And so I certainly would be open to doing something like that. And if I am unavailable at that particular time, I'm sure there's someone else that would. And I think the more that we can, as a community and as a country, have these discussions, the better off we will all be.
That would be super. I'll be looking for your information. Second question is, is there volunteer opportunities at the hospital?
There absolutely are. So we have a service for volunteers where you can go and register. We are a hospital, so there's some training involved in that, but there are a variety of different areas where people can volunteer, and that includes in the hospital, as well as we have a Fisher House on campus, which is a residence where family members can come and live, and so if there are opportunities for bringing meals to them, for connecting with them, so providing support not just for the veterans, but for the families that are there with veterans who are getting treatment.
And so the contact would be on the website, or is there a particular place that we can phone or provide to the community?
Sure. It is on the VA Palo Alto website. I'd also be happy to give you the point of contact. It's voluntary services is a service under the VA Palo Alto. So I believe when you go to the website, you can click on it and it will give you information, but if not, I'm happy to get it to you as well.
Can you guys get that?
Yeah, I'll certainly get that to you, and I can get you all a copy of the PowerPoint from today as well.
And I just wanted to mention that one of my neighbors does do this type of volunteer work at the VA, and he has a wonderful service dog, and he takes his service dog several times a month, and that's just a very, very wonderful way that he's been able to do outreach, both with veterans and their families. So if you have a wonderful pet that might be able to be certified to come out and be a therapy dog, then definitely look at that as an option.
Yep, I put up our picture of our dogs in training, too.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you so much. Can I have one of your bands?
Absolutely.
You said they're the most popular thing. I need to get those before they're gone.
No, we want them to
right.
get out into the community and where our veterans are, so.
Thank you. Fashionable, too.
They're very hip. That's what my daughter said.
Well, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our second action item, and Minka will start us off on this piece, and I will come in to close it.
Sounds good. So as you know, last month we spoke about a colleague's memo on a safe and welcoming community that was co-sponsored by Councilmember Wolbach. And that went to council on December 12th, and I'm happy to report, as you probably all already know, that that passed unanimously at that meeting. And so kind of a version of the resolution says, adopt a resolution affirming Palo Alto's commitment to a diverse, supportive, inclusive, and protective community. And it included the addition of people that live, work, visit Palo Alto after a section on privileges of everybody. There were some that just wanted to be a little more specific, that when people saw it, it wasn't just residents of the community that this applied to. What you may not know is there was a Part B of the resolution, which included a referral of the subject matter of this memorandum to the Human Relations Commissions for recommendation of implementation measures and additional elements that should be considered by the council in the future. So it was definitely very nice to get a referral from the council to the HRC on this matter. So per protocol, when council gives a referral to a committee, staff is called upon to really to look at the issue, to provide a report to their commission, to be able to provide any information that helps that commission in framing and discussing that topic, to be able to give advice back to the council. And obviously with the holidays, I was not able to do that in just a little over a week's time. So please expect to see that on the HRC agenda as soon as possible. And I think this referral really speaks to the council's understanding of the core of the work that the HRC does, and it was really an affirmation of the work that the HRC does. And I think I definitely look forward to some good conversations with the HRC on this, as I know you are as well. In the meantime, Chair Stone will elaborate on what the HRC is already doing in regards to creating a welcoming and supportive community, and you all can also discuss ideas that are HRC-led for other avenues in which the HRC can continue to be a leader in the community on this item. So I will turn it over to Chair Stone at this point.
Thank you, Minka. Yeah, the leadership and I felt very strongly that the Human Relations Commission needed to stand up and be a voice at this time in our nation and our city's history, with all the fear and anxiety that is out there right now. I know many of you are aware of the recent hate symbols that have appeared within the community over the past couple of weeks. Minka sent the sent the email around to all of us and the news stories. And so I think it's critical that we have that conversation, that we discuss it, and we kind of make the community feel a little better knowing that we are here. And because of that, I don't want to roll on and blabbering. I just drafted a mini statement for myself, just because I felt that it was necessary and felt compelled to do so. It's short, so just bear with me. The hate symbols that have recently stained our city have both terrified and sickened me. The Palo Alto, we all know, is a city of love and tolerance, but we will not tolerate intolerance. I believe many in this community are afraid and worried about our future, and I believe it is the responsibility of the Human Relations Commission to be present and available to all in the community who are frightened. At no time during my tenure on this commission have we been more needed than now. The Human Relations Commission is an advisory body for council, but we also must be an ear for those in the community who feel they need to voice their concerns. And I want to make sure that the public knows that they are always welcome at our meetings to voice their concerns, to voice their fears, and that we are here to listen to you and to provide help whenever we can. And I want to assure everyone that the Human Relations Commission is doing everything that we can do to proactively address issues of concern to human dignity and decency in our community, and assure that we will fight against hate and bigotry in all forms and continue to work towards keeping Palo Alto a safe, tolerant, and welcoming community for all, regardless of race, nationality, religious worship, sexual preference, age, immigration status, or zip code. We are here for you. And I think it's really important, so that's the end of my statement, I think it's important for us to be able to have this conversation to make sure that the community knows that if there's anywhere to go to voice concerns and fears, it's here. We are the commission that is tasked with that very important job. And we have been doing so much already before this year to address these issues, and we've been doing it over the past several years. And I think we need to make sure that we continue that going forward. I mean, we're co-sponsoring the Immigrants and Allies event that will be taking place on September 19th. January 19th. And I know Vice Chair Stinger and I, we met this evening to be talking about a workers' rights event that we're not sure if it's going to be an event or not, but that will be hopefully taking place over the course of the year, possibly this spring. And I'd like any commissioner also to speak up on the projects that you've been individually working on, so I'm not the only one who's dragging on here to talk about the work that you've been doing to address these goals that I just shared.
Do you want to?
Commissioner Savage?
Oh, no, no, I was just going to say a little more about the immigrants event and its importance at this time. Not just what you mentioned, but the planning of it. You know, I have been involved in planning a lot of events, but never before have I seen the amount of time, energy, and thought that has gone into this coming event. It's, you know, as I said, you know, the timing is right now. You're right. We have never been more important than we are right now as a commission. And I'm thrilled to be a part of it, both the commission and planning this event next week.
And I just want to second that because, yeah, we are being inundated with emails every day on the planning, and it's fantastic. It's going to be a great event.
I'd like to talk a little bit about a series that I've been working on with Human Services Department of the city. This is something that follows some of the forums we did last year, and the series has been called Being Different Together, Taking the Conversation Deeper. And it is an event sponsored by the city. Two of us from the Human Relations Commission are on the committee. That would be Commissioners Gordon Gray and myself. There's also a group of community volunteers, Pastor Smith from the AME Zion Church and Rabbi Sheldon Lewis. Some other city staff members are part of this committee. And our first event will be February 2nd.
I want to start by talking a little bit about the objectives, partly because that's who I am and I start with the objectives, but also because I think it's important to point out that we've been working on this program for over a year, or not for over a year, for a good part of the year. And we set these objectives in the summer. They're very timely now, but they reflect the core values of our community, a commitment to principles of respect, inclusion, dialogue, justice, and responsibility. The objectives are to build a community which can talk through difficult issues, to grow personally in our ability to listen to and to understand another's point of view, to create an opportunity to build relationships with others and develop a dialogue about respect for difference and diversity in Palo Alto, and to work towards becoming a model city for respect and inclusion. So I said we developed these objectives over the course of summer and fall, I believe. And we worked with an intern to look at best practices in other programs that other cities and other communities and other organizations were doing. And we decided we were going to go forward with a series of 4 conversations. And we had a sort of specific goal, a little amorphous, but with some direction until Dr. Brown, who was our keynote speaker in the March Forum, stepped up and has shared his expertise and his time so generously and really given us a format for our 4 events. The first event will be February 2nd, and that's going to be called Crossing the Line. And it's a chance for participants to reflect on the identity of this city, what makes us common, what things we share, and what are our differences. And then we'll follow up with a second event that'll dig a little deeper, delve a little deeper, to learn how to articulate our differences and express them. And then we'll go on to a third event, Engaging Differences, that talks a little bit more about tools. He talks about the oops and the ahs of learning how to deal with differences in the community. And then a fourth and closing program that'll wrap this whole series up and give us an arc on being different together and taking the conversation deeper. So I want to make sure all the commissioners are aware of the event on February 2nd. And we've worked very hard with a graphics person. I have some flyers that I'm going to give to each of you as we leave and ask you to distribute them and make sure we have good attendance. And that's my update.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
Can I just highlight a couple more
Please,
things, Chair,
yes.
Chair Stone? I think that illustrate the work that the HRC has been doing. I'm thinking of Commissioner Chen's Immigrant Voices series that has been on and off. I think it's something that we have talked about many times, that we will continue that as speakers become available. And for those that aren't familiar, that is inviting immigrants to Palo Alto. At this point, it has been immigrants from other countries, but I think that could be immigrants from other regions of the United States as well, to hear their stories, to learn from them, to see how Palo Alto can work to hear the voices, to learn from them, to let them know about volunteer opportunities within our community. So that is something we will continue to do. The other thing that Mary and I are just starting is the creation of a human services listserv. So we've taken the names of the people who have come to all of your events from the last year, and thanks to all your hard work, that was a list of several hundred people. Mm-hmm. And we are going to be, from now on, informing them of HRC Human Services or HRC sponsored or co-sponsored events in the community. So we'll have to keep it at that. I know there's a lot of great events in the community. I think for the integrity of the people how we got the names, we'll keep it at that for now, and asking people to opt out if they want to do so. But I think hopefully this list will grow, and it'll be a good venue for people that just hear about it somehow to be able to hear about some of these important events that are happening in the community. I wanted to think if there was anything else that I wanted to highlight. I think that's what I had at this point, and as Chair Stone, I think, is about to open it up to see if there's other areas that, or ideas that are bubbling up in any of you that you are, would like the HRC to continue to focus on, or maybe start to focus on. I know you have a full schedule. Several of these forums are happening due to the dedication that you're spending outside of this meeting time.
I had a question. I know we filled out a sheet at one point when we had our retreat and we talked about the things that we wanted to work on. I'm not sure, where are we with that? With the events that some of us wanted to take on? Like, I know that Darrell and I had talked about human trafficking, but that's on hold. But what are the other ones that are in the queue? Because I'm not clear where we go after taking the conversation deeper.
Right. That was a conversation that I know the Commission spent some time on last month. I think what I heard after last month was a continuation of the workers' issues forum or event that the chair and the vice chair were working on. I know that Commissioner Onan still has a commitment to the mental health conference, but was looking more towards the fall and was working this spring with Avenidas more on elder abuse issues. I know Commissioner Savage and Chair Stone really have got involved in this, so maybe shifted some of the focus that might have been on the human trafficking issue to these immigrant voices issue. But as I look through what we had, those were the ones that really rose to the top and that we spent some time on last month and we're going to continue to be worked on by commissioners.
Okay, so we don't have anything scheduled at the moment besides the series that we're doing with
the Being Different Together, the Human Service Series, of which you're on the committee. That is the one that has, well, the other event has a date as well. So those are the ones that have current dates. The other ones are in development.
Okay.
And this conversation is also sort of a bit of a call to action and a bit of an audible, given with where we're at and where the community's feelings seem to be right now since we had our retreat back on August 11th. So if anybody wanted to sort of shift gears or focus on another priority area, we're not, just because you signed up for something or came up with an idea at the retreat, you're not committed to that. If there was something else that you would prefer to take on or you think it has more meaning at this point.
I have a question. Last year we had immigrants here to talk about their life here. One of the common idea they have, they want a city to host an activity. And it's, I don't know how, you have talked with city officials and then they have some different ideas in terms of using media, other ways to communicate. But my observation is we have a lot of immigrants in this community, but each one, according to ethnic background, they don't talk to each other. So I think breaking the silo is very crucial in this situation.
No, I hear you, and I know we've had some conversations on that, and due to that, it's not something that has gone beyond the planning stages or the conversation stages at this time. That doesn't negate for 1 minute the worth of that type of event or that type of conversation, but that's definitely something that Mary and I will continue to have conversations on and bring the HRC in as possible. But it is not forgotten, Commissioner.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and the libraries has really, I mean, I don't have that list in front of me, but the the library, Ruth Ann Garcia, who's the branch manager at the Mitchell Park Library, is the staff member that Vice Chair Stinger was referring to. And the library is going to be such a wonderful partner for the Being Different Together. And just looking at what we're just calling ancillary events of they're hosting books, Silicon Valley Reads, and that is going to be something immigration or...
Yeah, they had two very good books for that.
Right.
They had gotten a grant on for immigration. They were putting a program together.
Right.
And they were doing videos of, I love this, Made into America. Immigrant stories of coming into Palo Alto. That's great.
So that I will send that out to the full HRC when those are, we have dates for some of those, but so there are partners within the city that definitely are working on welcoming and immigration issues. The library has taken on that very deeply.
How are they promoting that? Is it similar to what we're doing? Is it on the website? Is it?
You know, they have some, I will check on that. They probably on their Facebook page. She gave me a list of all the ways in which they were promoting it, which I will look at again, but I will get that information out to you.
Okay.
I had two thoughts that I'd like to mention. Both of them leverage on other things that are going on. I got an email today thanking the Human Relations Commission for its resource page.
Oh.
They said they'd gone on to a human service page and found...
Yeah, that was listed in the paper as well. I didn't know that was our page.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
maybe Family Resources.
I sent it, I put that together,
Aha.
sent that to Sue on behalf of the immigration
Got it.
allies, so it's a whole.
Well,
The truth comes out. It's real news.
Well, I see the real news, but the contact I got was a separate email, not
Okay.
related to it. So that would just be another idea to build that resource page. For example, when we have a speaker come
Okay.
and they give us links to the services they provide.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
We should catalog those for the community. And the second idea I'll put out on the table is more for the group that did the homeless vets. In my outreach for Being Different Together, I was speaking to the Public Art Commissioner today, and they mentioned that they were taking down the wooden sculpture in the City Hall Plaza in April. And the agreement is that the wood that was used will be donated to Habitat for Humanity. And there might be some opportunity for us to do a program around homelessness. We might want to focus on vet homelessness, to do something in the plaza that would link the HRC and the public arts works.
Be a good partnership. Okay, any other ideas or thoughts? Yes.
I have one more thought. I guess what I'd really like to say is I really appreciate your statement. And I think it's important that the commission be open to people in the community coming to us. But I also think we need to be proactive and, I hate to say do the situation. We just need to be aware of monitoring and cataloging the situation. And I'd really like to be proactive in responding to the council's request for implementation measures. And I guess I'd like to make a resolution that we have a subcommittee or a committee to work with Minka on logistics, putting together an outline, a schedule, so that we can come back in February and know where we're going and when we're going to respond to council. So my resolution is that we have a committee.
I agree, and I'll second that motion. I think it's critical, especially with where we're at right now, to be able to act quickly when council makes a request, especially with regards to these issues of inclusiveness and making the community welcoming and opening to all. And given that our body only meets once a month, I think we're too slow to be able to answer them right away without a subcommittee like this. So I was thinking that. And Minka, you need to get on Jeopardy. I've never seen anyone so quick at that button. I've seen it all night, and I go, oh, she's so good.
Now you're scaring me. No, I think the question was a subcommittee just for this referral from council, or a subcommittee on issues regarding just a safe and welcoming community in general and issues related to that, a short-term subcommittee on that. So that would just be clarification that staff is seeking.
I would like to make the resolution specific to the council resolution and specific to logistics, being a sounding board for the work that you're doing.
So council referral?
Yes.
Yeah, for the other resolution.
When you say logistics, could you say a little more? I'm not sure
I
what
was
you mean.
thinking of, if I start a report, a consulting report, I start with my timelines, the outline of what I want to do, how I'm going to get the information. So I don't want to charge the committee with making decisions for the commission, but setting up a framework so that the commission can operate more efficiently going forward.
And these would be, I'm still not clear, these would be programs that come out of the mission that we, being a safe and welcoming and diverse and inclusive and supportive.
Minka, can you explain the resolution a little
Sure,
more?
I will.
Yeah, okay.
So the referral from council says specifically, recommendation of implementation measures and additional elements that should be considered by the council in the future. So in regards to the subject matter of the resolution. So this is just helping the council with the eyes and ears of the HRC look at the resolution, and are there policies, are there procedures, programming really, lies to staff, but it could also look into programs that the council should consider that the city should implement. So that might come back to staff for programs and policies and procedures to implement, or just other things that the council could consider in furthering the resolution and the topic of a safe and welcoming community. So that's really one of the key reasons that we just don't bring a resolution like this to the HRC and say, let's talk about it. It really is like looking at it, having staff really be able to understand the desires of the council, being able to have an internal conversation about this, and then, if this subcommittee comes to be, just talking about how we can frame an effective conversation with the HRC on this matter, because we can just come and we can say, oh, let's do this, let's do that, let's do that. But, I think what the council is really looking at is that we've done some background into some of the ideas that we have, either if other communities are doing it, or really areas of deep thought and reflection that you have on a certain topic, or for a policy that you think would be really helpful that you'd like to recommend. So this could be a conversation that happens over several HRC meetings before it goes back to council. But my thought is that this is just a very thoughtful and thorough and not a languishing process, but something that the HRC is really proud of what they bring back to the council.
Thank you, Minka. So did that clear it up a little bit?
I guess so. I'm trying to imagine what would be an example of a policy. That's the only thing. So I guess we would discuss that, but that would, it sounds conceptual, so I'm just trying to.
Right, I think it's such in its infancy right now that it's difficult to really conceptualize it.
It doesn't seem to have a solid
Yeah, it's a
concept.
little
It
bit
is like
fluid.
scattered, very fluid. And everyone has heard of his own ideas, and we discuss here, and after that, we bring that resolution to the council? Is that?
Well, I think it's beyond just what you think is a good idea, you think is a good idea, you think it's something like you have this idea, and then perhaps it's something that you have some ideas about, and there's consensus on the HRC that you're interested in a certain type of recommendation, that you'll say to me, hey, Minka, can you look into, we've heard other cities that have done such, or we are interested in this aspect of it in order to make a recommendation to council. Could you please provide us some more information on that in order to help us, be more thoroughly versed on this in order to make a recommendation back to the city council to consider X, Y, or Z. So that is, in the way, the importance of a subcommittee to help be a clearinghouse maybe for some of those ideas, and it also helps me to better prepare a staff report for you for your consideration as you have this discussion.
So the city council is expecting to hear from us?
That is correct.
Okay. And is there some, go like this, it'll open up here.
Is that true?
Yeah, breathe.
Hands up.
Opens a line. Is there some time frame around that? Is it
The referral does not have a time frame, but as I speak to city leadership, who will probably be in dialogue with possibly the mayor and the vice mayor on such a topic, then we would get a little more clarity on that.
Really, I like to hear an example, certain things, and I don't get it. It's very general.
It is very general, that is true. That's why, hence the reason I think that there needs some good preparation for the HRC to have a productive conversation on this matter. And it could be that there's initial ideas that go to council and they ask you to go back and look at other things.
For example, the issue about starting a welcoming event, that's an idea, right? We could put that idea into a concept. And
possibly, yeah.
Yeah, this is like a context.
It's a context.
Possibly, yeah.
I think we're too early on right now and not prepared enough to really dive into the minutia of the council directive. I think this is
we're just
more
trying to understand, exactly what it is.
Right. So I think the importance of being able to have the subcommittee to be able, like Minka said, to be able to dive in with city staff to be able to understand a little better, and then to be able to more easily filter it out back to the commission at our next meeting, hopefully. Not that and this subcommittee is not going to have any independent power to be able to make recommendations to council on its own. I mean, it would all come back to the larger commission, anyways.
I was going to say, I'd be interested in doing some research on what other cities are doing that are calling themselves inclusive cities, or not inclusive cities. What's the word I'm thinking of? The sanctuary cities, like San Francisco, or something like that would be the research that I would think of doing. What are other cities doing that might help us formulate ideas for policies?
I think at this point, I would want the kind of the conversation and the thinking of the full HRC on something before I'd suggest that you just go off and research
as part of a
one
subcommittee
idea.
By the way, that is one topic that'll be addressed at the immigrants meeting.
Right. Maybe that's the place we can get some ideas.
That was a good plug. Councilwoman Koo.
So I wasn't there when they made the resolution, but I definitely know what it's all about. And I think you have some great topics coming up. And I was just wondering if I might, ask you to consider also after the presentation to perhaps have workshops or something that delves more into that particular subject that that presentation was all about. So there's continuation rather than this the subject stopped. You know what I mean? So if that's something that you might put together for each of these topics and these great subjects that you're working on, perhaps there's more to it. Even crossing the line, for example, I look at that and it can go for different groups, such as even for children. in terms of the subject of bullying, in terms of the subject of being different, LTBG, all of that, so bring in perhaps that conversation as well and have workshops after that presentation. And if that is something that can be put together and presented, maybe that might be something that continues and can be presented to council, and it's not a subject that will just stop after the presentation.
That is our hope. Dr. Brown is the moderator. Pastor Smith is going to be the co-moderator, so that we can have legs and carry this forward into to repeat the program and extend its life.
That'll be super.
Okay, any more questions or comments? Let's try to bring it to the motion that Vice Chair Stinger brought up, so we can address that right now. Then we can kind of go back to the bigger topic if any commissioners are interested.
I would be interested in a subcommittee.
Do we have to take a vote?
Yeah, we'll take a vote. I just wanted to see if I have any more comments on the motion.
Yeah, I had a
Yes.
comment. So I'm not opposed at all, of course, to our forming a subcommittee, but I do feel like we may be acting a bit prematurely because we're just hearing about this resolution in Part B. We haven't seen Minka's report. I'm just wondering if we need to lay a little groundwork before we take votes and make these types of decisions.
When I hear that, I think this subcommittee being, I think it is allowing us to, I guess, to lay the groundwork for a better understanding of it. Otherwise, if we don't do anything, we leave it up to Minka and Mary, who are clearly more than capable of doing that. But I think creating the subcommittee will allow us to be involved early on and to understand it a little better. That's at least my hopes.
That was my hope, and that was why I tried to choose words that may not have been the best words to say. I don't see the charge to the committee to come up with programs or recommendations, but to support the development of a staff report, so that we're not hearing it for the first, so that we can just support the development of a staff report.
So how do you do that? In what way, specifically?
Well, without a subcommittee, the first time we would see it would be February 9th. So that would be our first chance to ask questions.
Yeah.
If I can get it together by then, it's possible.
Okay, yeah. Would not be before February.
Right.
And so that would be the commission's first chance to ask questions and say, I'd really like to know more about, I'll make it up, we talked about what other cities are doing, or I'd really like to know more about this. And the committee's charge would be to provide some of those questions, and
I think we really need to look at the city's charge, to me, and working on to frame the conversation as well. It could be that this subcommittee's charge just at first is just how to frame the conversation with the HRC, and then maybe if this, comes back for a continual meeting, that they would be more continuing to frame that conversation, but doing some of that background work into some ideas that come out of future conversations. So that's how I want to kind of take it step by step and seeing how best to use the services of the subcommittee. Because it could be a little more staff-led at first, and then once there's a little more meat on the bones, that's when the subcommittee comes in. Like I said, I need to step back and really look at the resolution and see how to best frame this conversation. But I could see the subcommittee just, helping to see how that conversation could be best framed to be more fruitful. This is, we have not received a formal council referral that has not been HISREP related in a while. So I just want to be able to do an effective job to get you the information that you need to have a fruitful conversation, but also to utilize the services of commissioners that want to work with staff to further develop or further investigate some ideas to bring back to the full commission for a full discussion.
Well said.
Maybe an elaboration might be, I think you are so much more versed in some of the questions than I would be, for example. And so I could see where you would make a statement and I might have a question needing more clarification. And once you're in a database, it's easier to do that all at once. And so I just think it would make your research perhaps more efficient if you understood some of my naivete and some of the questions I had up front.
I mean, the more prepared I can come with a staff report to meet your needs, that would be wonderful. I think I just want to give it with the caveat that those that serve on the subcommittee that will be able to just work at my direction to help this be as fruitful as possible and what we bring back within the framework of how it needs to be done.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think the importance of this subcommittee, as you both have already discussed, is this. Without it, the HRC, I mean, Minka's always a great voice for us, but without it, the actual commission itself has no involvement during the drafting of that, and as Vice Chair Singer said, we won't see anything until February 9th at the earliest. This gives us a chance to be involved from the very beginning, and I think that's important for us. So if there's no more comments or questions, then let's take a vote on the forming of the subcommittee. So all in favor of the vote, say aye. Aye. And anyone dissenting? Okay, great. And nobody abstaining? I shouldn't do the aye thing at the same time. I can't hear it. But great. Then it passes unanimously. And thank you, Vice Chair Stinger, for that. Okay, so now
what happens?
Sorry?
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
So
any interest in being on the subcommittee? Vice Chair Stinger? I know I am as well.
Okay.
And great. Commissioner Gregg, was there anyone else who just didn't raise their hand fast enough who would not beat Minka at Jeopardy?
I don't think you can have more than 3.
No, I know. Just
Well,
in case I would step
okay.
down if somebody really wanted it. Okay, wonderful. Then that is our subcommittee. Thank you.
That's what we'll figure out.
Okay.
I need you.
Now, I did promise we'd go back to the bigger discussion after having that vote, if there was anyone interested in continuing the larger conversation. Going once, going twice. Okay. Moving on to business item 3, review of our updated HRC mission statement, and hopefully tonight we'll actually be able to have a vote on it and get this finalized. So sorry, remind me, who's on the subcommittee? Who's on the subcommittee for this?
I was.
Dal, Shelley, and Jill.
Okay.
And Jill.
Wonderful. So, who would like to? Commissioner O'Neill, like to lead our conversation on this?
Well, I would like to advocate for the first draft alternative from the December 8th meeting. As someone who helped write it, I naturally think it's extremely brilliant. And
I second that.
And I think that it encompasses the primary messaging that we want to include for the HRC. I also think it's more succinct than some of the other versions. And I think this is as close as we may be able to get to really accommodating all the messaging that came from so many diverse inputs. So I'm fairly happy with that draft, and I'm hoping my colleagues are too. But I'm, of course, very open to hearing other people's opinions or suggested edits if they're not.
It's conversations, right? Not conversions.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ask.
That pesky conversation.
Daryl found that typo, and then I
Thought I got it.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't hit that button fast.
Okay.
I just copied it from
No problem. I just wanted to make sure.
Where does it say conversation?
The second line in the, it says conversions, it should be
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I wrote that
Conversion.
when I
Yeah,
was,
you sorry.
I wrote that
Conversion.
when I
Yeah,
was,
you told me.
I was extremely Pete's deprived when I wrote that part, so.
Oh, yes, and you found it.
And I agree with Jill. Actually, I'm fine with any, I think they're all good, but the one that Jill mentioned is a teeny bit better than the rest. So I'd like to go with that as well.
And can you, Commissioner O'Neill, can you read it for us so that way all those people watching at home can follow along?
Okay, I'd be happy to, thank you. All right, this is our proposed draft of the HRC mission statement. To promote the just and fair treatment of all people in Palo Alto, particularly our most vulnerable populations, by promoting awareness of issues and enabling conversations that enhance inclusion, the HRC strives to create a community where civility, respect, and responsible actions are the norm.
Wonderful. I love it. I think it's great. I think the subcommittee did a fantastic job. So well done.
I'd like to second that. I think word crafting is the hardest thing in the world, but when I hear you read that, I'm really proud. Good job.
I was going to say, the only word that I'm not crazy about is enhance. I don't know, to me that's just one of those, I would say, I had the word in my mind. Like fosters inclusion or something like, I don't know, I guess this is assuming we're already inclusive and we're enhancing it. But I think that is what we do. We're all about inclusion. So anyway, that was my one little caveat. Other than that,
Any other comments?
I love it.
Are you making a motion to change the language?
Yeah, I would just say that one word. I would like to see the word either fosters or facilitates or fosters. I like that.
That fosters inclusion.
Yes, I like that.
You second?
Second.
Okay. All right, then we'll have a vote on changing it from that in. Does anybody else want to speak to it? Anybody who drafted it want to defend their enhance?
I challenge you to a duel.
I think enhance is a little more plain English speak. Fosters isn't quite as user-friendly, but I think we're getting to the same thing, so I certainly wouldn't nitpick it. But I do, as a writer myself, I always try to make sure my language is very user-friendly because not everyone in Palo Alto speaks English as a first language, and enhance is a word that's more readily recognizable.
Really?
Fosters does sound like ice cream to many of us.
Yeah, now I'm hungry. Yeah, and I think I was kind of leaning towards foster, but I do see what you're saying there, and I also like the word enhance because I do think it implies that we are an inclusive community already, and that we are just trying to continue to better ourselves. And I've always believed that we are one of the most inclusive and diverse communities who celebrate that, and I like the idea that we're trying to enhance that. So I won't be supporting the motion because of that. It's a good argument. No wonder you went to law school. Anyone else before we take the vote? Okay, then we will take a vote. All in favor of the motion to change the word from enhance to foster, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? Okay. Then the motion does not pass. Anyone want to make anyone have any additional motions before we take a vote on the updated mission statement?
Not attached.
Okay. Then does anybody have a motion to adopt the new mission statement?
I'll make a motion that we adopt this as our mission statement, the one that was read into the record.
A second.
All right. Great. We have a second. Anyone want to speak to the motion? Okay. All in favor of the updated HRC mission statement, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Wonderful.
Yay, we have a mission
Yay!
statement.
Well done, subcommittee. I love it. I think it's great.
I just have to say, I want to thank you for fostering unanimity.
I like Dairy Queen.
All right, great. So now moving on to our reports from officials. Do we have any commissioner reports? Okay. Our council liaison report, Councilmember Koo.
Oh. Welcome, yes.
It's very nice to be here.
Oh, and you are?
It's very nice to be here. Thank you. So on Monday night at the City Council, we had some items on the consent calendar, and Councilmember Walbach actually included into the legislative priorities the language for keeping our city a safe and inclusive city. And so that's going to be lobbied up at Sacramento, and it's going to be moving forward there, so we're very happy about that. Some of the things that I was listening to tonight, I think one of the one of the other things that you can do in terms of reaching out to the community at the grassroots levels might be to involve Palo Alto neighborhoods, PAN. So I don't know, Minka, if you have their email address to send. So that, I think that, and then they spread it out to a neighborhood, so maybe the events would get better and more attendance there. Then also, being the first time a council member and a liaison to a committee, I just wanted to find out from everyone here, how would you like me, to participate, and how can I do my job to help you?
Great question.
Because I have no idea. I don't know if I participated too much already. Am I here to listen? I definitely don't want to disrupt what you have. It's great to hear all the ideas that you have. So I would love to know how you'd like me to participate, what I can do to help, and what I can take back to council also.
Great question.
I think you did a great job. I just kind of keep doing what you did. Your participation was helpful, especially when
I'd like to add, when something goes on at council that might have an HRC, that fosters the HRC in some way, or something related to the HRC. Of course, if we would want to hear about it, and we really are proud of the work we do here, and you are kind of our carrier pigeon to relay that to the council.
I would like to say, too, just welcome you to our meeting. And also, it's very important to us that we've been lucky over the past few years that our liaisons have actually attended our meetings regularly, which I'm sorry to say in the past they did not always do that. And we became to be a bit of an orphaned commission, so it's wonderful to have a liaison who's active and engaged and present here at the meetings. We do have events coming up. We would love it if you would be able to attend, and if you can let your colleagues know so that some of them may want to attend. And finally, I think as we work on this referral from council, we'll greatly value your input as we come up with ideas that we want to refer on to the full council. We'd love to have you vet some of these ideas with us and let us know if you think we're on the right track. You're really our first line of making sure that we're doing the work that council needs us to do.
Perfect. Okay.
May I just pitch one more thing?
Nope, sorry, you ran out
of time. Talking about events, the Chinese New Year is coming up, and the Chinese community with the city sponsorship is putting on a Chinese New Year event celebration, and it's on February the 12th at Mitchell Park Community Center from 2 to 5. There's going to be a lot of things going on, a lot of different traditional and cultural activities. So I hope that you'd be able to attend and also to meet some of the Chinese community that's there, and hopefully we can engage that cultural group to join in to more.
Great. I'll find that information and send it on.
All right, thank you. Okay, Minka, our staff liaison report.
I think the only thing I have this time is regarding HISRAP and CDBG. So the CDBG committee, I believe, has already been contacted by Eloisa, and raise your hand, is Alasani, chair, and you're not, you are HISRAP, that's nuts, and Stinger. I was just trying to, off the top of my head, get the three. So HISRAP, the RFP, request for proposal for HISRAP. So HISRAP, Human Services Resource Allocation Process, our grant program to human service agencies in the community. That RFP closes on Thursday. So once it closes, and that is, I know Commissioner Gordon Gray, Commissioner Onan, and Commissioner Chen, Mary and I will work to get you the applications and a timeline for review and a timeline for our meetings to review those.
So I've already heard that I've been made a portal administrator?
Oh, yes.
So can you explain a little bit more?
That's really interesting, huh? No, so the city has moved its RFP bid process to an online system called Planet Bids. So the nice thing is, or you can just let Mary and I know if it is a nice thing, is that all the information will be online. So you will be able to access the submitted information from those who are bidding or submitting an application online. So that will give you access to that program, and they will ask that you do, some of the evaluation online and a review process there. Mary and I are happy to get you a booklet full of that information, hardcover instead, if you so choose to have it that way. You can indicate that to us now, and we'll create booklets for you as we have for the subcommittees in the past. So, you want a booklet, online or booklet?
I'll take a booklet.
Booklet?
Well, I'm feeling like I should try to be green. I'll try to go online. Yeah, because I hate to see you guys print all that stuff out. It's just huge.
I think what we'll try to do, because a lot of it is online, is maybe just look at it, and the items that tend to have a greater conversation during the review process.
That would be helpful.
So maybe not a lot of the supporting documentation, but the core part of the applications.
Okay, that's
we
a great
can do
compromise.
That.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're going to give us sort of criteria and how we judge and all that?
You will certainly get clear information on what to look for and the process and how it works and so forth.
So that's the HISRAP.
That is HISRAP. CDBG, all that information comes from Eloisa, and that, my understanding, she had contacted you already, and you already have a date, and that will be, your recommendations on that are actually coming back to the HRC next month in February, where HISRAP will come March or April, hopefully March, back to this committee. And yes.
Thank you, Minka. All right. As
my hands under my legs so I can press the button. Now I'm traumatized.
For PTSD.
I know, I'm sorry. Do we have a tentative agenda for our next regular meeting? We already have a couple of things, as Minka just said, CDBG. We're going to be planning our HRC Council study session. That'll be coming. We have a date, don't we? Finally, yeah, February 27th.
Do we really have a date now?
No, we'll see.
I want to debrief on the first taking the conversation.
Yes, we will need a debrief on that and on our wonderful Immigrants and Allies event as well.
And we'll need to follow up on the council referral.
And how about we implement the buddy system again with the new council, or attempt to?
Do you have thoughts on that?
You know, I'm so glad that you suggested that, because, so you're saying HISRAP and
CDBG.
I have no idea what that is, and I'd really love to know what it is. And also, how do you get funding for the things that you do, or is this what you do?
I can just give a 30-second synopsis on that, but I think having we can talk offline about that, but the buddy system, I think, is a great idea.
Thank you.
We've had that in the past.
Well, paired with a council person.
Can I ask why it didn't work? In what how did it not work?
Council members didn't respond.
The council member did not respond.
Busy.
Yeah.
It's more of a time commitment
Yes,
than anything
just-
else.
Yeah,
You know,
busy in a very truthful way for the level of, work to be on council and, a council committee. So I think it was not a lack of desire for the topics of the HRC, but just time management in the.
You want to try to resurrect it, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and just to try to get to coffee with whomever you're paired with, and, and establish a rapport so, you feel comfortable contacting them and they do you.
I think that's a great idea. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. Okay.
Well, I just think that also makes the council members know everybody here, the commissioners, so it's a good idea.
Okay, and no other
Did you want a speaker, another mental health speaker, or do you feel like with the other agenda items next month that we should take a break on that? There's already 5 topics, but I just wanted to have clarity so there's not a disappointment next time.
I think that's
Could
probably
I-
bad.
Could I give like an open leg to you, or so if you start your report and there's somebody who you think might be helpful in the city to help us, you invite that person?
That's a good idea. Okay, well, with that, good first meeting of the year. Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.